Okay. All right. Here we go. Welcome. My name is Neil Bonsgard, and my pronouns are he and him. And welcome to this National Drive Electric Week virtual presentation around electric vehicles and how electric vehicles are a perfect fit in Central Oregon. This is super exciting. National Drive Electric Week is a national event we've been involved with for a number of years here in Central Oregon. It's a really good opportunity for folks to get together, connect with drivers, and we're trying to replicate that as best as we can in a COVID year. National Drive Electric Week is sponsored by Nissan, Plug-in America, the Sierra Club, and the Electric Auto Association. And I'm part of the Environmental Center putting on this event. Okay, so in case you're not familiar with the Environmental Center, we're based in Central Oregon, based in Bend, and work across Central Oregon to try to help advance sustainability in our community. And on the electric transportation front, which is where I work, I've been trying to help make better connections and make the process easier for purchasing an electric vehicle, but also working on other forms of electric transportation around electric bikes and electric buses. So the Energy Challenge is a program of the Environmental Center. That's where I work. And want to thank our program sponsors, the Zero Energy Project and the City of Bend. And for this presentation in particular, we want to thank, we were able to get a generous donation from the Normal Now program, which is sponsored by Electrify America, and Plug-in America, who puts on the National Drive Electric Week event. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll and then tell you a little bit about what is what's coming up for the presentation today. So I have a poll that just should be live or showing up on your screen if you're joining us on Zoom. So what's in store for us today? We're going to start with a little bit of an electric vehicle 101. So we're going to talk about how electric vehicles work and why it's important to go electric. I'm going to talk about the Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. We're going to do, and then we're going to hop into a little bit of a more exciting piece. It's all exciting, but we're going to do a panel discussion and answer folks' questions with 3 Central Oregon EV drivers, Cooper, Lindsay, and Moe, who will be joining us later for that. And then we'll wrap everything up with a message from a local dealership on how to do test drives right now. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the survey responses. It looks like we're pretty evenly split, whether folks have an EV or not, or it's complicated. And this is really exciting to see. We have a really big mix of who is here. Yeah, I was really encouraged to see the folks signed up, and hopefully this content can be shared. We'll have a recording of it afterwards. Platform-wise, this recording or this presentation is on Zoom and it's on YouTube Live right now as well. It is going to be recorded, so we'll be able to share that and other resources with everybody that's on the call. So then you can share, so you can go back and review, and then also so you can share it with other interested drivers. So go ahead and get started with that EV 101. So the first question is really, why transportation? There's a number of reasons why we're talking about transportation. It seems to pop up in a lot of conversations. One of the big ones that I wanted to cover is just strictly talking about carbon emissions. Transportation is the biggest sector of average Americans' emissions. So we want to make sure that we can focus on that area. And also, transportation is just a really important part of our daily lives. We want to make sure that we can find good alternatives that can work for all of us. So this has probably changed a little bit over the years, but when I ask the question about what is an electric vehicle, sometimes the first thing that people think of is something like this, something super futuristic. Electric vehicles are normal now, using that language, but oftentimes people would originally, kind of conjure an image of something that's futuristic and not very realistic. The next thing that people would often think about is some of the earlier models of more expensive vehicles that seemed out of reach. But like I mentioned, they're normal now. So we want to highlight that there are other vehicles on the market. There's the growing used vehicle fleet, and that electric vehicles that are out there are honestly just better than the other cars that are out there. Also, other electric transportation options. This is an electric school bus. The options of what's available in electric is really growing, and it's a really exciting time to look and see our transportation sector shifting. So what is an electric vehicle, though? This is a question that a lot of EV drivers get, but it has a gas tank too, right? So we want to make a little bit of a distinction here. A fully electric vehicle looks like this diagram that you can see here. There's a battery that gets recharged primarily from plugging it in, either at home or at charging stations out in public. But it also gets charged when you're going down hills. It can regeneratively brake. So that's how the power comes into the car. That's the fuel. Electricity is the fuel for an electric car. And then an electric motor replaces the engine in an internal combustion car. And that is what allows you to propel the car forward. So pretty simple, lots of fewer moving parts, and honestly, a little bit easier to understand than an internal combustion car. Another type of electric car that I wanted to mention are plug-in hybrids. These come in a lot of different forms, but they can be a little confusing. So taking a step back, if we go back if we go back a ways till before the Prius was out, a hybrid was a really confusing thing for people to understand. So we now are in a spot where most folks know what a hybrid car is and don't know what a plug-in hybrid is. So a plug-in hybrid simply is a hybrid vehicle with a much bigger battery and the ability to plug it in to get electricity from outside of the car. So in this diagram, you can see that there are two ways to fuel this car. One is with electricity and one is with gas. Plug-in hybrids come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and they range in how much you can actually drive on the electricity alone. Some of the shorter range vehicles are around 12 miles, and then some of the longer range vehicles you can very easily get your daily commute done with an all-electric car. And then if you want to go on a road trip or if you forget to charge, then it turns into a hybrid after that. So that's a plug-in hybrid. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, or ask questions afterwards of our panelists. So who drives electric? I'm going to pause real quick, and then we're going to show a quick video of an electric vehicle driver named Amy Mitchell from a prior presentation that we did with her. This is really just trying to highlight that EV drivers are all around us. Your neighbor might be an EV driver, and oftentimes it's you don't even see or know how many EV drivers that are out there. So we'll go ahead and just going to get this queued up, and we will start doing that in just a second. Okay, so here is that little bit of an introduction from EV driver Amy Mitchell.
When we walked out of the theater, I told my husband, I'm never buying gasoline ever again. I don't want to contribute to this industry. And he said, what about getting an all-electric car? And I said, well, you can't really do that though, right? I mean, how does that work? How do you take trips? How would we go visit friends in California? We're renters. Don't you have to have a charging station at your house? And I would say it took us a year of exploring all those hesitations that people have. Had we known how easy it is to own an electric vehicle, I wish we had done it the day that the thought crossed our minds. My name is Amy Mitchell. I live in Bend, Oregon. I've lived here since 2001. We have been renters much of our time living in Bend. And you have less control, less decision making as a renter. We spoke up and advocated for ourselves, and it was because others before us had spoken up and advocated that our landlords were willing to say, you know, you are not the first to ask. Maybe this is something we should consider. When you initially examine your electric vehicle choices, I think people are drawn to Teslas. I'm a teacher, my husband works at a bike shop. That wasn't gonna work. Was there an option that was affordable for us? When we started looking at used electric vehicles, they're very reasonable. I was spending $200 to $250 a month on gas. To charge our electric vehicle was about $50 a month. The cost that we did not understand at the time that we were gonna save is maintenance. So it's been a win-win for us economically. We get the question often, well, should I buy an electric vehicle now or should I wait for a longer range vehicle to become available at a more affordable price? And my answer is buy one today, buy one right now, because yes, the technology will continue to get better, but what you use your car for on a day-to-day basis, an electric vehicle has everything that you need right now.
All right, so just gonna take me a second to switch back to the presentation. But that was just a little bit of a peek of one EV driver in Central Oregon, and we'll be able to ask some more specific questions a little bit later. So here's I know I'm not supposed to put graphs, but I think that it's exciting. This is a graph as of the end of 2018. In the last 2 years, it's grown a lot since there. So this is a graph of all of the EVs, electric vehicles in Oregon. And since this graph was made, there's another 10,000 vehicles on the road. So we have 32,000 electric vehicles on the road in Oregon as of the end of August. And we have 640 public locations where you can plug in to get to charge your electric vehicle. Although it's important to recognize that most of that charging happens at home. And we crossed the 1,000 vehicle mark in Deschutes County. We have about 1,100 vehicles, electric vehicles in Central Oregon. So it's definitely growing, and this is a shift that we're seeing across the country, but kind of amplified here in Central Oregon. So one of the big questions that we get is, how does charging work? I'll cover this briefly, and then we can ask our panelists about it later. There's 3 types of charging. Most charging happens at home. The car comes with a charging cable, and at the minimum, you can just plug into a regular wall outlet. That's what Amy does. As long as you're driving less than 50 or so miles a day on average, that can work for a lot of folks. But you also can jump up to what's called a level 2 charger, which will get you about 25 miles of range per hour that you're plugged in. Then beyond that, it's all about road trip charging. Road trip charging is called a lot of different things: DC charging, level 3 charging, supercharging. And depending on the car, there's different spots that you can charge. But all you have to do, there's a lot of really great technology out there. You put in the car that you drive, and then it will highlight the chargers that are out there. Another question we like to get, or that we get a lot, is it really better for the environment? Here's a specific view of what annual emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, look like, depending on where you're getting your power from, because there's different carbon intensities depending on your electric utility. But you can see that compared to an internal combustion engine, very significantly better. And then over time, that starts to take into account the additional emissions from creating the vehicle itself. So I'm gonna hop ahead a little bit to talk about incentives. Main message is that for most folks buying a new vehicle, well, there's a lot of incentives out there. There's up to $7,500 from the federal government. We'll talk about who that's available for all manufacturers except for Chevy and Tesla. There's a state rebate that is, the standard rebate is up to $2,500. There's an income qualified rebate that can be stacked on top of that, that's $2,500. There often can be dealer discounts, utility discounts, and so that ends up being, can work out to be about $12,500 off of a new vehicle, $2,500 off the used vehicle. There's a lot of different scenarios. So I want to put on a different hat and talk about the Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program. So that's specifically the Oregon rebate, which is really great. It's a rebate, not a tax credit. And so that means it's available to more folks regardless of your tax liability. What is the OCVRP? There's two pieces of it that can range from $1,500 to a total of $5,000 off of the purchase or lease of an electric vehicle. They're available to Oregon drivers and residents, and there are a lot of reasons why to go electric, and this incentive just helps encourage that and shows that the state is also excited about electrification. So like I said, there's two components, the standard rebate and the charge ahead rebate, which can be added together to equal $5,000 if the purchase that you're looking at qualifies for all of those. Who qualifies? It depends a little bit on the rebate. Obviously, for the income qualified rebate, you have to be income qualified, so that's only going to be individuals, not businesses or anything like that. But because it's a rebate, it is available to businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, the standard rebate, which is $1,500 or $2,500, depending on the battery size. There are a number of specifics, and we'll encourage you to go check out the Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program website if you have any specific questions about that. And it looks like folks are starting to ask questions in the Q&A or chat function as well. Charge ahead is similar to the standard rebate, but obviously you have to prove that you meet the income qualifications. And it's a pretty broad set of income qualifications. They're really trying to make this more accessible to moderate income households. So these are the limits, and I want to caveat this by saying that you can check for sure on the website. There's a calculator where you can put in your address. This will roughly work for most folks in Deschutes County, but those, especially if you're close to the limit, you want to check because it's based on your area to see if you qualify for charge ahead. What I wanted to focus on with charge ahead as well is that if you qualify for charge ahead, you could buy a new electric vehicle and get $5,000 off from the state. That's both of those combined. But the really cool thing is that if you qualify for charge ahead, you can also buy a used electric vehicle and get $2,500 rebate from the state on a used EV, which can put those really within the range of a lot of low and moderate income households. Like I said, they're available for businesses and nonprofits, and not all vehicles. The vehicles that qualify, there's a list on the website. It's going to include all electric, battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles, and it's based on battery size and cost. So there are a couple of things that would disqualify a car. If the base MSRP is over $50,000, then it doesn't qualify. But the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, which are close to that, because it's available for under $50,000, even if it's optioned above that, it still qualifies for the rebate. Zero emission electric motorcycles are also eligible for a $750 rebate. And we'll answer questions. It seems like there's a lot coming through in the chat, so we'll answer some more specific questions about this a little bit later. This is another exciting offering, is that you, at certain dealerships, you don't even have to put up that initial $2,500 to get the rebate back. The timeline right now is about 6 to 9 months to get it back, but some dealerships are offering this discount as a cash on the hood discount, which means if you go to one of those dealerships, you can buy the vehicle and then they'll just discount the price of the car by $2,500, and then they handle the paperwork while you're there, and they deal with getting the rebate back from the state. So there's a link on the website. All dealerships are eligible, so make sure to ask a dealership if they're offering it, and encourage them to do so. If they need resources, they can reach out to the State Department of Environmental Quality, or reach out to me and I can connect them with the right folks. Again, there's additional resources. All of you here got a sign up email from me, and I will do a follow-up email. So you'll have my email address, neil@envirocenter.org. You can also reach out if you have very specific questions about the rebate program to Oregon CVRP@energycenter.org, or reach out to their phone number. So I just breezed through a lot in a short amount of time, but I want to make this a little bit more interesting and get a larger group of folks on the call. This presentation I normally take an hour to do, and I squeezed it into a half an hour. So my goal was to kind of hint at a lot of those little pieces around electrification, so then we can really get the answers from the folks that drive these on a day-to-day basis. So go ahead and start putting your questions into the chat. And then I am going to try to get our panelists to go ahead and turn on your videos, and then we can get started from there. So just stick with us for a little bit, and we can get those folks on here for the presentation. And Moe's going to be joining us in just a second. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And welcome. So just a reminder, they look like normal people here because they are normal people. But one thing different about them is that they both drive electric vehicles. So Cooper, do you want to start by just giving yourself a little bit of an introduction and remind everybody what kind of electric car you own?
Sure. So yeah, I have a Tesla Model 3. And every time I say that, people probably think it's like a $80,000 car or something like that. But with my $10,000 of rebates, it was barely a $40,000 car. And I am charging it at home. I have solar panels on my house, so the electricity is very cheap and clean. But I have to say, I don't picture myself ever driving an ICE vehicle again. Obviously it's a very fun car to drive, and I've enjoyed it for the 2 years I've had it. I've got about 36,000 miles on it. And I actually just drove down to South Lake Tahoe this week and back. No problems. It makes the drive a lot more fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was able to ride with Cooper over to Salem. Got a ride in his Tesla over there, and it was a very it's a fun car to ride in, and a completely different charging experience than some of the other EVs, which we can go over a little bit more. Lindsay, do you also want to introduce yourself as an EV driver and Environmental Center employee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my name is Lindsay Hardy. I also happen to work with Neil on the Energy Challenge program, and my pronouns are she and her. I drive a 2014 Nissan Leaf that I bought used about a week after the 2016 election. So yeah, I guess now I've been driving it for about 4 years, and we have been loving it. And we do have another vehicle that we use for longer range trips, but I now live in Redmond and commute every day from Redmond to Bend, and drove through some really great snowstorms last year. And it's a great family car. Most days it has myself, my husband, a toddler, and a dog in it. And we all enjoy it very much.
Awesome. And thanks for joining, Moe. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, and then just give yourself a little bit of an introduction of yourself and the electric vehicle that you drive?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. My name is Moe Newbold, and my pronouns are she, her. I live in Bend, and I bought an e-Golf, which is Volkswagen's electric Golf, in February of this year used. So I've mostly had it during the pandemic. So it actually, I haven't driven it as much as I probably would have otherwise. But it has about an 80-mile range, and it's perfect for in town. And then we also do have another vehicle that really hasn't gotten any use during the pandemic. So yeah, thanks.
Great, yeah, thank you for joining all of you here and all of us on the call. A couple, just as a reminder, a couple of you have already asked some questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Go ahead and keep those questions coming, and we'll ask them of our panelists. One of the questions that came up, and I'd like to spend a little bit of time focusing on this, is kind of the purchasing process. So what did buying a used EV look like, and what was the market when you were looking? We'll start with Lindsay, because I know you bought yours a few years ago, and then we'll talk about Moe and your experience in a little bit more recently.
Yeah, I actually worked with a local Nissan dealership and let them know that I was interested in, that I was very seriously considering an EV. And they actually took down a lot of information about what I was looking for in a vehicle, as far as like how many miles it had or how many bars it had left on its battery. And then even like if I had preference on like colors or the trim level. And they searched high and low and actually found a car. I think it came from Georgia. And so I actually had a really great selection, and I would get texts daily of like, here are 3 more options I found. And I'd say, not quite right. And I got to keep kind of selecting or narrowing down what I was interested in, which was really nice. There was a really robust used market then. And let's see. Yeah, it was a pretty easy process. At the time, they had somebody there who was super excited and drove a Nissan Leaf himself and was just really eager to get more people in Leafs. And then I actually ended up getting a great deal. I paid $10,000 for my car, and I sold my Subaru, which are like gold here in Bend, even though it was 10 years old and had a check engine light on. I was still able to sell it and pay for more than half of my Leaf.
That's great. And Moe, I know you had a interesting process learning about EVs and finding one that you wanted. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into it. I was definitely less intentional than Lindsay. I started looking just for a used car because my Volkswagen Beetle was giving me a lot of trouble. And I found on Craigslist that somebody in Eugene was selling a really low mileage Ford Focus EV, I think it was, and it was in my price range. So I was really surprised by that, that I would be able to afford an EV in the price range I was looking at. So that was super exciting. And then I started looking into it more. It was challenging, especially during the winter, I was trying to navigate like how I might get the car from Eugene from the guy selling it. And then I was is this local? People are in Bend here?
Mostly.
Okay. Well, there was a local Bend Facebook group about electric vehicles. So somebody let me know that there was a Ford Focus EV at one of the local dealerships, and I test drove it, and it was great. And then I was looking in Portland and found that there was a Volkswagen e-Golf, which is like what's speaking to me because I am a Volkswagen fan. So then I ended up finding Platt Auto Electric, which is in just outside of Portland, and they specialize in electric vehicles, and they were really helpful and really informative. They answered like a lot of the questions I had, like about batteries and like how to know about degradation and all that. And so I ended up purchasing my vehicle from there, and wanted the adventure of driving it home in the winter, which was like, it was definitely an adventure.
Yeah, this is some of the earlier electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure that's out there. You kind of feel like the pioneer. It's becoming more normal and becoming easier. And that also depends on where you're going and what car you're in as well, and how many options you have. Since we're on the topic of how you bought the vehicle, a lot of folks are really interested in Teslas. They're one of the most popular electric vehicles on the road. Cooper, do you want to talk about a little, I'm sure you've purchased a vehicle before this one, a little bit about how the purchasing process is different with Tesla compared to other cars?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't think I'd actually ever been in a Tesla before I put money down for it. I mean, the Model 3 that I actually purchased wasn't even out. So I was one of the people that put money down like 2 years ahead of time. And I waited, and then, you know, finally was on the waiting list, and then finally got the car in Portland. You know, so they have some places to look at cars, like a little south of Portland, Tigard, I believe, is one of the few areas where you can look at Teslas and see the dealership, talk to people. So it is a little harder to get to and find a Tesla to test drive and to check out. But on site, their website obviously has all the information, the details, the customizations and the configurations. And I believe the used Tesla market is growing exponentially. So even used Model 3s already, or used Model S's are out there. But yeah, not a lot of like local dealerships to go check things out. So it's definitely a little different that way.
And then once your reservation kind of came up, which would be if someone was interested right now, there's not a 2-year waiting period for the Model 3. Then how did that work in terms of actually buying a car on the internet?
Sure. Yeah. So once you configure it, and you know, and figure out that final cost and, you know, color and range, and I think they still do have a 2-wheel drive option, but most of them are all-wheel drive now, and of various performance levels and things. So yeah, once you configure it and purchase online, I think, yeah, within a month or so, you should hear back from them, and they'll keep you in the loop of, you know, what the local places you can either pick it up, or I think even sometimes they might deliver it even closer to you. So they're very good at communicating. You also get an app with the car on your phone, which is actually the key to get it in and out. So your cell phone becomes the access to the car. And that's how you do maintenance, and that's how you would sort of track a lot of this as well. But the buying process overall is very easy, and their customer service is quite good.
Yeah, that's great. And then just kind of wrapping up the used vehicle discussion as well. Cooper, you mentioned that the used Tesla market is growing. And it's something that, as somebody that's been watching the electric vehicle world over time, it takes a lot of cars on the road until there's a lot of used cars on the road. So we're starting to see this kind of this trickle down effect of more and more vehicles being available, where even 4 years ago, you know, it might have been really hard to find an EV, or even harder to find a used EV, and there just weren't as many on the road, except for some of the older Nissan Leafs. But one of the interesting pieces with electric vehicles is a lot of folks choose to lease electric vehicles for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons why people choose to lease, and obviously people buy cars in lots of different ways, but one of the reasons people lease is they might be apprehensive of what is coming up. We saw that in Amy's video. She said, just do it now, trust me. You'll enjoy the years that you have in your car, and then if you ever want to, you know, get on new technology, you can always make that change in the future. So some folks will choose to lease, so then they have an easier process typically in 3 years of seeing what other vehicles are out there and then making the decision at that point whether they want to keep the car or upgrade to something that might get more range or charge faster or something like that. So that's one reason why. And then another reason why people are leasing, and this is something that I didn't go into a ton of detail on the presentation, but the federal incentive is a tax credit. So for a lot of folks, including myself, I don't have a large enough tax liability to take a $7,500 tax credit. The same is also true for the Environmental Center, who is a nonprofit, so we don't have a tax liability. So a lot of folks will choose to lease, and when you lease the vehicle, the dealership takes or the manufacturer takes the tax credit, and then they discount the price of the car by at least what the tax credit is. So that's another reason why there's a lot of leases. So wrapping this all up, how that all affects you and the used market is that if you're interested in a car, there's not a lot of used ones out there. See how long they've been on the road, and it typically takes about 3 years from when they really started producing a lot of them until they get onto the used market, because leases, getting returned at the end of their lease is a lot of the source of those used vehicles. So
yeah, that's what happened with my 2016 e-Golf. A bunch of them had just come up, their leases had just finished, so there was some availability.
Yeah, and it kind of works like clockwork. The Chevy Bolt is another popular electric car, and there were very few on the used market until it had been out for 3 years, and then magically they started showing up. So that's a little pro tip. So staying on the incentives question, we had a question come through the chat on, are there any utility discounts here? So what I can say is that utilities are definitely in the region are very interested in electric vehicles and in trying to help shape the market to grow and to encourage folks to charge at certain times of day. So then we can transition to an electric fuel and then not tax the system too much. The specific question was about Central Electric Co-op. And I can say that all of the electric utilities are considering programs right now to try to incentivize electric vehicle adoption or charging stations that might allow you to schedule what time you charge. So then you can charge at night or times where there's not as much stress on the grid. But none of those programs are out yet. Unless something just came out yesterday. Cooper, did you get an email about a time of use charging pilot or something like that?
Not really, and I actually haven't dove into the pages much. It seems to mainly, do what you're doing and introducing people to electric vehicles. So I don't know if it mentions much specific discount wise, but helps people find out the savings they could, get and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So the more is on the way in terms of those utility discounts, but those other discounts are usually a little bit more significant. But then the electric utilities are definitely somebody to keep in mind. I know there's some pilots being considered or proposed to the Public Utility Commission as well. So another question that we get pretty often is how you charge. So I want to ask all of you a couple of questions about that. Number one is, where do you charge the most? How do you charge there? And we'll kind of start with that for the regular day-to-day piece of charging. Cooper, you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm generally charging at home. I don't have a daily commute like I guess most people now. But since I was driving to Portland a fair amount, I can charge very quickly at home. And I've actually gone through, as I've had this car for 2 years, I started with the regular 120 volt plug, which would give me like a trickle charge of 4 miles per hour of charge, which takes a long time when my car can go about 310, 315 miles on a charge. So 4 miles per hour would take a little bit. I then upgraded in that house to a 220, or more or less like a washer dryer plug. And that got me about 35 miles per hour of charge, which was, plenty for overnight charging. And then now I actually did find a used Tesla charger, which is even slightly faster. So I have that in my garage and get about 45 plus to 50 miles per hour of charge. So most of the charging is at home. Sometimes on long trips like I just did to Tahoe, I do use the superchargers, and that is a benefit I will say with Tesla, is just having all these charging systems that are the fastest out there built into my navigation. So they tell me where to go and how to get there and whether I'll even make it.
Yeah, that's definitely a spot where Tesla has shined because of their investment in their charging network. Lindsay, do you want to talk about how you charge?
Sure. I am mostly charged just level 1 at home. We have a plug outside. It's actually meant for an RV hookup. And so if I had an adapter, I have a level 2 charger that we had installed at our previous house when we installed solar. We had them put in the 220 so that we could plug that in. It was a juice box, so it was super easy to hang on the wall and just plug into the outlet. We didn't hardwire it in, knowing that we might leave someday. And so I just need to get an adapter if I ever wanted to actually use that here to fit in with our plug that we have for the RV hookup. But most days we're just using level 1, and we drive to from Redmond to Bend and back. On days that I drive or I'm the one with the car, we have level 2 charging at the environmental center, so I can charge up there. But otherwise, we just do the trip and charge again at home and charge overnight, and we have 100% by the next morning. Although today I might have to take 2 trips, and I didn't really plan accordingly. I might have to stop in at the Nissan dealership and do a little supercharging in Bend. So every once in a while, especially if there are folks visiting and we're doing lots of activities like going to Smith and then have to go back and go to the airport or something like that, back in times when we did a lot of that, I would use the supercharger at Nissan or other places, but typically I haven't had to use that much. And we have done some longer trips too. And there are really good apps that show you for charging what you can use, like on PlugShare, and folks will even put in notes about if it's working or if there have been any issues with it in the past. So it's nice to know that folks are using them and to know that it's most likely going to be working when you get there. So we've traveled along the coast or gone to Portland a few times or stuff like that too, which is really fun. We found that a lot of the charging stations along the coast were either near like breweries or other places. So you definitely have to have a designated driver to do some of the fun pit stops or alternate and pass it around. And our dog has always loved it when we've done those trips because we have to stop a lot and play fetch and get out of the car. So he's always stoked to stop for charging.
Yeah, and I've only been charging my car at home in a regular outlet since I brought it back from the Valley. So yeah, pretty much it's plugged into just a regular plug, which people are always amazed by. And I think it takes about 12 hours for a full charge. So overnight, usually fully charges my car, or maybe that's a half charge, I don't know. And so pretty much whenever I come home, I'll plug it in, and then it's usually ready to go the next day. I will say that taking the Mount Hood Pass from Portland to Bend was the challenging piece for my shorter range car. I don't know how much range yours has, Lindsay, but
About the same.
yeah, so I had to, and it was winter, so that makes the range a lot lower, and going uphill reduces the range too. So like there was a charge station at a tavern that I had dinner at, and then I went up to Ski Bowl, and there was like there's actually a Tesla taking the charger. So that made my trip longer because I think there was only one, or at least that I could find. And then I went down to the Warm Springs Casino and hung out there for a couple hours and eventually made it home. So that was the challenging part with charging, but I haven't had any issues, just driving people to the airport and going around town. I went up to Tummalo Falls a couple weeks ago. So yeah, mostly just at my house.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's interesting. We talk about electric vehicles and we talk about charging as if they're all one thing, and they're all so different. The range of your car, how it charges, how quickly it charges, it very much depends car by car. And that's really important for folks to research and to understand, and to recognize how different it can be. I remember when the Chevy Bolt came out, there was a small group of folks in the Bend Electric Vehicle Club that all had these shorter range Nissan Leafs. We're all really stoked on it. Early adopters, knew which chargers to stop at, knew about the free coffee at the Warm Springs Casino. They are all about the charging stations. And then we had one of the first folks in Central Oregon that got a Chevy Bolt, which gets 238 miles of electric range. And he got that car and we were like, oh, that's great. Like where do you charge on your way to Portland? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I drive to Portland and then I plug in there and then I drive home. Like, I don't understand this charging conversation that you're having. And so I think it's important for folks to recognize that when they're looking at a car, especially when you're combining the new vehicles. Almost all of them get 200 plus miles of electric range, 200 to mid 300s. And then older vehicles can get anywhere, most of them are around 60 miles and up. And so I think those are just very different use cases, and either a really good used electric vehicle specialist like Platt EcoCar or EV Rides LLC, both in Portland, can help you with that. And I also do offer what I call EV matchmaking. You can reach out to me and I can help you try to find a car that works for you. So Cooper, do you want to talk a little bit more about the charging, kind of looking at another example of charging with Tesla, which is a really robust charging network, and quick charging? Like what did your road trip look like that you just went on, and how different was it, do you think, from what it would have been if you were in an internal combustion car?
What was the last part?
Just how different it was as a Tesla road trip compared to if you were in a internal combustion car.
Oh, okay. Well, the stops are a little longer. So obviously charging does take a little bit longer than filling up a gas tank. But generally, and a lot of people like to stop. When I drive, I don't like to stop much. I like to just go. But most people like to stop every 2 hours or so, which works out well generally on most routes with the Tesla, because their supercharging network, and is growing rapidly, generally has superchargers about every 2.5, maybe 3 hours, which you can drive that long, and at least in my Tesla. And so then you're sitting there generally for about 15, 20 minutes. Tesla luckily does make it entertaining, since I can watch Netflix, or I can, watch other videos or YouTube on this big screen I have. And those are at superchargers where I'm getting, about 600 miles of charge per hour. And so they're generally quickish stops, especially since it's quicker to charge when the battery's lower. And as you fill up the battery, it gets slower and slower and slower to charge. So generally a few more stops will help, and people like to stop anyways. But yeah, so I think that's the main thing, is just that the stops will be a little longer, but Tesla does make it pretty easy to find where these chargers are. And I guess to answer the question in the chat, at least with superchargers, I think I maybe went from like 50 miles of charge to about 280, let's say, in about 35, 40 minutes. And I think that cost me upwards of almost $18, $17 at the supercharger. So there is some cost. I think it differs a little bit state to state with the superchargers, but that's about what it costs. But I usually don't pay much more than $9 for a very long trip. Going down there for 8 hours was a little more.
And that is something that has been asked in other presentations as well, is how do you pay for all of these things? Generally speaking, most charging is happening at home. So those other trips are kind of the unusual aspect of your normal driving. And a lot of the chargers, like here in Bend, there are a number of public chargers that are available, and some of them are completely free, like at Deschutes Brewery. Pine Mountain Sports has a charger, and it's free for the first hour to get you in the store. But then if you just need a little top off, but if you are going to be charging longer, like if you have a completely empty battery, they charge you like $3 an hour after that. And you can either call in to pay or join some of these networks and use an app. But generally speaking, we're seeing more and more of those supercharger or DC fast chargers costing about the same as gas, but most folks are using them very infrequently. I wanted to share a couple of different resources of how a lot of us research trips. So the first one that I wanted to show is a program. It's also an app, or sorry, a website. It's also an app called PlugShare. In this, the analogy that I use is, yes, there are different types of chargers, but in the technology, you just put in what your car is, and then it will only show you the ones that are relevant to you. With a gas car, I don't care about diesel, so I don't pay attention to those ones. I just look at gas stations that have regular gas. Same with electric. If you have a Tesla, and then you don't care about the DC fast charger that's in Madras because you can't use it, so you just take it off of your map. So this is a map of some of those level 2 chargers in Bend. And then the orange ones are some of those faster chargers. I think I have this set for the Nissan Leaf right now, of some of the other spots that you can charge. And then for road trip planning, so this is really helpful for lots of different trips. But then for road trip planning, one of the tools that I use is called a Better Route Planner. This is an example of what a drive would look like in one of the new Nissan Leafs. Between here and Seattle, there's 2 stops, kind of like a longer lunch and then a coffee stop, which over the course of a 6+ hour drive is a pretty normal amount of time to stop. So we've gotten to a point where it's getting closer it's getting a lot closer. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and answer a couple questions, and then we're going to watch a quick video. Oh yeah, a couple of different comments that you all already answered in the chat. Just kidding. Okay, so let's see. Everybody that's actually panelists, go ahead and stay on. I'm going to share this quick video that I recorded this morning at the Nissan dealership to just talk about what in-person test drives might look like. Driving a car is the biggest thing that you can do. Driving an electric car is super fun. The Nissan Leaf that we have at the Environmental Center, some of these used EVs, they are really peppy, fun cars, and getting in them is really important. We wish that we could have done that. We normally do during Drive Electric Week, offer test drives, but we want to show that you still can go to dealerships, drive some of these, and maybe find one that works for you here in town or somewhere else. So I'm going to start sharing another video that you can see a little bit about the test drive experience at Nissan here in town. So just give me a second. And here we go.
Good morning. My name is David Moore from Lithia Nissan of Bend, Oregon. Today I have the 2019 Leaf SV long range. Come on in, go for a test drive. Most people have never driven an electric car before, but if you can only imagine never going to the gas pump, zero emissions to contribute to the environment, comfortable, quiet ride, 226 miles of range. We will ensure your safety, sanitizing the vehicle, letting you go on a test drive yourself, and catering the vehicle to the features and benefits that work for you and your family. Come on in, we'll make it simple. Come drive a Nissan Leaf, see what an electric car is all about. Thank you again. My name is David Moore from Lithia Nissan of Bend, Oregon.
All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Real quick. I'm gonna have each of our panelists kind of just share something that you want to make sure folks leave a presentation. We had some of you missed the poll in the beginning, but there are a lot of folks on the call that are interested in EVs or might have one at work and are thinking about one themselves. So what's a message that you wish more people knew about electric cars? You can think about it and pick who wants to go first. I'm not going to call on anybody.
This is super hard. I have like a list of
Just
things.
sum it up. Just sum up everything in one answer.
Yeah, one thing we didn't talk about much today was maintenance. I've had to buy a battery, like a regular car battery for my Nissan, and windshield wipers twice. So I've invested a little over $100 in the 4 years that I've had my car. And then I also bought snow tires, but I would have done that for any car. So the maintenance is little to none. It's pretty amazing when you start to factor in all the other costs that are associated with car ownership.
Yeah, I guess I'll second that. Hopefully we're allowed to repeat a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cost of maintenance. I haven't even had to fill up washer fluid, which I think is really all I can do. And that's still lasting me after 2 whatever years. I mean, I will also say, I don't know about the other cars, but the Tesla, I get over-the-air updates. So my car is actually improving ever so often. And so I get, release notes, and I get new video games to play while I'm sitting at a Tesla charger and all these different things. So the car actually gets better. It even got faster like a year in. They added a little boost. So, you get little gifts like that.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think one thing that was really cool to me was the low mileage. Like my car was basically brand new. It was like 9,000 miles. And I did end up paying a little more for like the nicer version. So it was like $16,000. And then I've applied for the $2,500 rebate from Oregon. So for like a really newish, barely used car, it was really affordable, and it's super fun to drive. It's very, accelerates quickly and like hugs, it hugs curves. So I really enjoy that. And protecting the environment also.
Yeah, you can have your cake and eat it too, or something like that. Well, awesome. I want to thank
Can I
you.
add one thing, Neil?
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead,
Really
Lindsay.
fast. When we moved from Bend to Redmond, a big part of that decision was could we afford to like drive every day into Bend, and what would that do to our environmental footprint? Because that's a really big concern in my family. And the difference of like penciling that out with an electric vehicle versus a standard car, it just made that move like actually make sense. Because driving to Bend every day would really add up, and then just wouldn't sit well with us for our footprint. So it's just really amazing the cost of how much it reduces all of your expenses.
Yeah, that's really great. And I know that we weren't able to cover everything in this I want to let everyone know I will send up a follow-up and a recording of this presentation, and definitely follow up with me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, kind of good, bad, or ugly about electric vehicles. And then we also have, we will have other opportunities in the future to be able to actually come out. National Drive Electric Week next year, hopefully we'll be in person, have a fun big car show where you can ask drivers specific things about their cars, sit in them, ride in them, and in a year there's going to be even more on the road. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll wrap that up here. So thank you all, panelists and participants, and make sure to go test drive a car or reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.